It's horse beef. What's going on, guys? Today I want to fucking revisit some robberies, right? Some classic, controversial robberies. I would like to go back and revisit those. Specifically, Jon Jones versus Dominick Reyes, Peter Yan versus Sean O'Malley, unsurprisingly so. For the first episode of this potential series, yeah, of course you would expect me to revisit that one. And also Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Gleison Tibau. Now, I know there are a lot of hate watchers out there that are going to love that one in particular, and you'll probably call me Islamophobic at some point, but I would just say watch through the video before making a comment, or just leave a comment, and that's perfectly fine for me because that does help the channel at the end of the day. So if you'd like to leave a comment like that before watching, as is expected, as is the usual, of course, I would very much appreciate it. But yeah, I feel like this is a good selection of three robberies. They're all pretty controversial. I feel like they're not exactly unanimous robberies, right? There are a lot of people who would say that the rightful winner was awarded the victory, and I'm not even really too sure if I agree with any of that or I disagree with any of that, but I would actually like to take a look and potentially change my thought process on some of these robberies, because just going into it right now, there's two in particular that I'm very much convinced are robberies, and one that I'm not exactly too sure about, but I will come to some kind of a determination by the end of the video. But speaking of robberies, did you all know that your information could be being robbed at this very moment? Because did you know that you, I, anybody really could go to any data broker's website right now and purchase pretty much anybody's data for just a few bucks, and it's completely legal, not to mention the fact that big companies with poor security are being hacked on a daily basis, and your personal information is being sold to the highest bidder on the dark web so that spammers, scammers, and identity thieves can target you personally, and they face zero repercussions for it. And that's why I'm happy to announce that this video is sponsored by Aura. Aura will stay vigilant in monitoring the dark web and alerting you if any of your personal information is exposed, as well as swiftly alerting you if this information allows outside access to your credit and or bank accounts. Plus, to be sure that you know that Aura has your best interest in mind, they offer up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario become a reality for you. On top of this, Aura also identifies data brokers who are selling your personal information and submit requests to opt out on your behalf. In just a few weeks of using Aura, you'll be wondering what happened to all that spam you used to seeing. The Aura app also includes a VPN with over 100 virtual countries. Now ask yourself, does your current VPN provider offer all of this? Now if I've piqued your interest, you can go to my link, aura.com/horsebeefmma, and try all that Aura has to offer for 14 days for free. It's our own responsibility to protect our data, and Aura simply streamlines that process for us. So let's start off here with Jon Jones versus Dominick Reyes, because I feel like this one is potentially the most egregious of them all, just based on the way that Dominick Reyes' career went after this fight. You know what I mean? It's just so unfortunate, because from when I watched the fight live and upon rewatching it, Dominick Reyes was done so dirty. And this is pretty much where the whole narrative of, oh, to beat the champ, you have to really beat the champ, which pretty much goes against the rules, the scoring criteria, and all together. Because last I heard, you just have to win more rounds than your opponent, score more points than your opponent, which Dominick Reyes did. Unless you would like to argue that Jon Jones did enough to score a 10-8 in either the fourth or the fifth. In my opinion, he did not, because he did not have Dominick Reyes in any sort of real danger, did not have him close to being finished at any point in those rounds, was only really able to take him down and put together just a bit of controlled time and marginally outlanding him, while Dominick Reyes was still able to have his own moments and land shots in rounds 4 and 5. So I don't want to hear that Jones scored a 10-8. So it's really the only argument that you have to say that Jon Jones could be given anything more actually than a loss here. Because in the opening 3 rounds, this is exactly what happened. Dominick Reyes is landing the big shots, and even if you want to argue that he wasn't landing as many of the shots as you thought he was landing live, right? Because the blinders can be on when you're watching a fight like this. You want Dominick Reyes to win. You know, you want the underdog to win, and that can, I guess, galvanize you every single time you see the underdog land a shot. You're like, oh shit, man, it's kind of like Figgy versus Moreno the first time around, where Joe Rogan was like fucking beaten off every single time Moreno landed a single shot, and every time Figgy lands a shot, it's ignored. But oh my god, Moreno landed a fucking double jab. Holy shit, dude, Figgy's on fucking wobbly legs. No, right? And but that wasn't the case here, right? Dominick Reyes was genuinely outlanding Jon Jones, winning all of the exchanges, landing big fucking uppercuts, man. And like, yes, Jon Jones has a fantastic chin. He has the benefit of having a granite fucking chin. But Dominick Reyes was winning all of the engagements in the opening 3 rounds, and there's simply no argument to score either of those 3 rounds to Jon Jones. And it's just as simple as that. So to revisit this robbery, I've come to the same conclusion as I came to when watching the fight live, when rewatching the fight subsequently, and when rewatching it a few minutes ago. This is a horrible, horrible robbery. Jon Jones did not win a fight here. He thought the takedowns won him the fight. Well, buddy, you scored takedowns in the final 2 rounds. You did not score takedowns in the opening 3 rounds. You thought the takedowns won you the fight. Well, Buster, you still fucking lost 3 rounds in that fight. And sure, the takedowns could win you the last 2 rounds, for sure. But that does not win you a fight. You still scored less points than the challenger. And the fact that the judges even have the audacity to score any of the opening 3 rounds to Jones is so selective, because when watching those rounds live, there is no fucking way you can come to that conclusion. There's simply no way. I don't buy it. It's a rigged decision in my opinion. I think it's just as simple as that. You look at the media scores all together, and yeah, there are honestly a surprising amount of 48-47s for Jon Jones, but the majority were siding with a Dominick Reyes victory, and the president, or the former president of the UFC, happened to side with Dominick Reyes in this one as well, right? Dana White thought that Reyes should have been given the decision, and that says a lot considering how biased he seems towards Jon Jones, right? So must have not been in the good graces of the UFC around that time. Otherwise, Dana White may have not have been so inclined to be honest about the situation.
Going into the last round, I had Dominick Reyes 3-1 going into the last round. My kids are terrorizing me that the fix is in and how can this happen, Dad? Reyes won that fight. And the list goes on and on of people that are reaching out to me.
And the reason why I have the stats on the screen right now is not because you even really need the stats to know that Dominick Reyes won the fight, but for all the stat merchants out there who don't actually know how to watch a fight, there you guys go. Those are the numbers for you. And I think the numbers are relatively accurate. There are some cases where I think numbers kind of don't tell the full story. But the numbers here are pretty accurate, because it's not like Dominick Reyes is outlanding Jones like a Rob Font versus Marlon Vera type of situation. And then Jones has his moments where he's actually landing the real significant strikes and hurting Dominick, right, in the middle of the volume coming from Dominick. But that's just not the case. Dominick's landing more volume and more impactful shots throughout rounds 1 through 3. And Jones simply lost those rounds. Therefore, he lost this fight. Yes, this is an egregious robbery. Yes, Jon Jones should have a loss on his record to Dominick Reyes. And that's just as simple as it is, right? There's no argument that Jon Jones won this fight. The only argument you have is this non-existent argument that you have to truly beat the champ to beat the champ. But the fact of the matter is that fights are scored round by round. There isn't this imaginary criteria that just comes up in title fights. That's just a bullshit argument to try and prop up Jon Jones in this situation, to act like he did anything to win this fucking fight, when he simply didn't. So, you know what, guys? I'm going to move on from this one because this is a blatant robbery. And now let's move on to Gleison, Tibau, and Khabib Nurmagomedov. The reason why I want to talk about this one is because of the narrative surrounding Khabib, because for me, Khabib is an all-time great, 100%. I think he's probably the second best lightweight of all time now, but behind Islam Makhachev. But the narrative while he was fighting and after he retired to sort of prop him up as the GOAT, right, was never defeated, never lost a round, which is just a crazy, crazy argument to make when Conor arguably took a round off him. And then this fight with Gleison Tibau exists. And I wasn't even too sure what people were talking about with this fight as a robbery. It's like, really, it was a robbery. He won 30-27 on all 3 judges' scorecards. Surely this couldn't be that bad of a robbery, right? But then I went back and watched this fight. And, yeah, it's a fucking robbery, all right. Khabib does nothing in this fight. If we're being real, Merab got a lot of shit against people like Jose Aldo and Peter Yan for failing takedowns and winning by failing. This is the genuine example of that, because as opposed to this fight, right, at least Merab was able to outland Jose Aldo over the course of the fight and outland Peter Yan quite significantly over the course of their fight. Khabib not only was unable to score takedowns here, not a single one actually, and was taken down, by the way, but he was also outlanded in every round except for the second, where Gleison Tibau also landed the bigger strikes. And before I get comments about fucking Gleison Tibau's positive test for EPO. It was after the Abel Trujillo fight, not directly after the Khabib fight. He very well could have been on EPO when he fought Khabib, but he didn't test positive at that point, so it can't really come into account when it comes to this. So this fight does, this decision still does stand as a robbery for me. And I feel like it's always good to take a look at the media scores to see where these particular people's heads were at after this fight. And as you can see, man, it's almost a full unanimous 30-27 for Tibau. Jordan Breen from Sherdog.com actually scored a 30-28, which means he scored a draw in one of the rounds at best for Khabib, and MMA Junkie scored it a 29-28 for Khabib. But let's be genuine here. Is this the most egregious robbery of all time? No, I don't think it is. Although I do think it's a bit strange that all three judges came to the conclusion that Gleison Tibau did not do enough to win a single round here when, from what I saw, man, Khabib was employing Juliana Pena levels of striking. His striking honestly looked terrible in this fight. He was whiffing on a good majority of his shots that maybe the judges thought were landing, but he was really whiffing on a lot. And from what I saw, Gleison Tibau was winning the vast majority of striking exchanges. He got his eyebrow cut open, I believe, but for me, blood just doesn't really win you a fight, right? Drawing blood should not win you a fight because grazing strikes, as I always say, can open a cut. So I don't really see blood as a deciding factor here. Khabib also was, as I said, unable to score any takedowns, and he has all this control time, and maybe you can give him certain rounds based off of aggression, but that's the only argument there. Because when it comes to these significant strikes landing, right, Tibau had him beat, and I get that defense doesn't win you a fight. Like, defending takedowns does not win you a fight, but failing at everything you're doing also does not win you a fight, right? Khabib was failing at all the takedowns. All of his control time came by smudging Tibau against the fence, right? That's just the fact of the matter. And he was losing the striking engagements in all three rounds. The bigger shots were landed by Tibau. Look at this big knee that Tibau landed. Credit to Khabib for being able to eat it. But in my personal opinion, dude, this fight is a robbery, right? I don't understand how three judges can come to the conclusion after you watch a man fail all 13 takedown attempts, whiff on a good majority of his strikes while getting caught clean. I'm not too sure how all three judges came to the same conclusion that Khabib wins every round here. It's only by effective aggression, and that's all. And even if you want to call it effective aggression, I wouldn't go as far as to say it's effective aggression. It was just aggression, right? Even the commentary team. You want to talk about fucking Khabib before he was in the good graces of the UFC, man. Joe Rogan was being pretty fair commentating this fight, and him and Mike Goldberg both came to the conclusion that Khabib's about to lose this one, and they were both very, very shocked to see Khabib being given the decision. You can see it, right? It was before the commentary team were supposed to root for Khabib. It was before he was the big star, before he was the big cash cow, right? And you can see it. They were being honest.
Well, if he loses this fight, which we both think he probably will lose by decision if nothing changes in the next 50 seconds or so, it's a learning experience for this young man.
And keep in mind that I don't even think that Khabib having a loss on the record would do anything for his legacy. Because an undefeated record in and of itself doesn't do anything for you. It's the resume, it's the accolades that stand the test of time. His legacy is just as strong with a loss on the record versus without a loss. Like I don't think him being undefeated actually says anything. And this whole narrative, like I said, of undefeated, like never lost a round, never bled. Okay, sure, he's never bled, but that's not exactly a point to prove anything. I feel like that just means he hasn't really gone through the fire. And he hasn't really gone through the fire if you actually watch his fights, because he never went up against a stylistic mismatch. In my personal opinion, you might disagree with that in some way. And let's also apply the same logic that these types of fans like to apply to Alex Pereira and saying that he's never fought any predominant grapplers, right? He's mostly gone up against strikers. Well, Khabib has gone up against strikers. And think about it, right? When a striker is going up against strikers, what's happening there? They're in their wheelhouse, but they're also in the wheelhouse of their opponent, who are strikers. Khabib is a grappler going up against strikers for the majority of his career. You see exactly what I mean here? Exactly, right? It's a stylistic mismatch in his favor, as opposed to Alex Pereira, who even though he may be a better striker on paper than guys like Khalil Roundtree, Jamal Hill, and Yuri Prochazka, the danger is still there because they're also strikers. You see exactly what I mean here? But go back and look at who Khabib's fought, especially at the very top level. He fought like zero stylistic mismatches. Unless you want to talk about Gleison Tibau, right? Gleison Tibau was a stylistic mismatch in retrospect, And we saw how much he struggled against him with his, well, again, Juliana Pena, as I said, esque striking and inability to get a takedown. He won this fight by smudging Tibau against a fence, and it's as simple as that. So is this a robbery? Yes, it is. Is it the worst robbery of all time? No, it's not. I wouldn't say it's the worst robbery of all time, but the better man simply did not win the fight, and that's just my opinion. And then we have the one that's, kind of personal to me, being Peter Yan and all. This one really pissed me off because the whole narrative after this robbery really confused me, to be completely honest, and it made me realize that people really are just stat merchants in the MMA community, because this was the narrative. You guys ready for this shit? It was, round 2 is obviously Peter's, which it is. Round 3 is obviously Sean O'Malley's, which it's not. And round 1 is the toss-up, so it really comes down to it. However you score the first round, the first round was inactive. Peter Yan gets the flurry off, and then the takedown, for me, wins the round for him. But it doesn't even matter. I'm actually going to focus on the third round, which everybody who thinks that Sean O'Malley rightfully won this fight scores for him unanimously and says, there's no argument, though, because he outstruck Peter by such a large margin. And if yes, you're to look at the strike numbers, 40-15, you would think, oh, wow, man, Peter really got beat up in that round. But no, you're fooling nobody, stat makers, whoever the fuck put these stats down, because those stats do not tell the full story of round 3, and I will explain why. Because Peter Yan should have won this fight 30-27 all fucking day. But first, let's take a look at the media scores, because, wow, there were actually quite a few that scored at 30-27 to Yan, which I also did, but there were a bunch of 29-28s and one solitary 29-28 for O'Malley. But like I said, let's talk about round 3, because I feel like it's been completely misrepresented. And it really is the tale of two different halves, right? Because the first two and a half minutes essentially was mostly Sean O'Malley landing the bigger shots, right? He lands the big knee up the middle, which cuts open Peter Yan, and then I believe a nice left hand following it up, which are two great shots. But then the flurry that comes right after, he's really whiffing on a lot of them. Like that knee that whiffed right there, if that landed, maybe this fight would have ended actually in that moment, because that was a big ass knee. But besides that, and then of course you get to the partially blocked head kick. Peter Yan then shoots for a takedown, right? So a lot of people would call that a panic shoot. Then again, it doesn't really matter whether he was hurt by it or not. It was partially blocked, but that's still a significant strike, because singular hand blocking a bucket head kick does not exactly take all the damage away, but it does take some of the impact then again. So you can't exactly say it landed clean, but you cannot say it didn't land at all. But then from this point forward, Peter Yan began to really pour it on Sean, counter him at will, and land the real significant strikes of the round that actually led to Sean O'Malley looking diminished, right? Because you can say that Sean O'Malley wins because he opens the cut on Peter, but the cut didn't do anything to actually sway the fight in any one direction. In fact, after the cut was opened, that's exactly when Peter Yan began steamrolling Sean in this round, right? So for me, because of that fact, right, and the fact that the cut had no real effect on Peter besides him having to wipe blood away from his eye before landing a fucking two-piece counter on Sean O'Malley, right? So for me, the cut really doesn't play a big role at all and should not come into play when it comes to scoring round 3. But we focused on the big shots that Sean O'Malley landed in round 3, so let's now focus on Peter Yan's moments in that round, right? Because based off the numbers, right, 40-15, you would think that surely Sean O'Malley was just piecing up Peter Yan, but aside from the big shots that I isolated, most of those quote-unquote significant strikes were just pity-patter shots that weren't even landing a good majority of the time, but Peter was landing clean. Now we have a counter roundhouse to the body, catches the shot, dude, right hand followed by a left, another check left after catching the shot, and he catches a shot once again and lands a pretty decent leg kick that seems to have an effect on Sean O'Malley, and that was only within a very short time frame, and these shots all fell right in between the partially blocked head kick and the nice flurry from Sean O'Malley in the first half of the round. But then after that flurry from Peter Yan and the partially blocked head kick where Peter Yan quote-unquote panic shoots, he then controls Sean O'Malley for about a minute while fighting off multiple fouls from Sean O'Malley, hooking the gloves, grabbing the fence. But if you want to know more about that, I recommend seeking out MMA Guru's video about this particular fight, because he did a really good job at isolating all of the moments where Sean O'Malley was hooking the gloves and, like I said, grabbing the fence. And after they get back to the feet, Peter Yan once again punishes Sean O'Malley for his lack of defensive responsibility while throwing shots, lands that beautiful step in left overhand followed by a right hook, which then allows him to get the fight to the ground once again and continue controlling Sean O'Malley. Until, of course, he blatantly grabs onto the fence and uses that to get out of that position. And then nothing really happens until this nice leg kick, and then Sean O'Malley gets timed perfectly and gets taken down by Petr Yan, followed by a few little hammer fists there. Now, another part of the narrative that was going around is that Petr Yan, sure, he landed takedowns, but he wasn't doing any damage with them. Well, first of all, we've already gone over this before, that it's not damage at all, it's impact, and he definitely was landing some ground and pound shots. They weren't massive shots or anything, but he was still landing shots on the ground, and it's also kind of hard to get massive amounts of shots off when your opponent is constantly hooking your fucking gloves, which was happening in this fight repeatedly. And that also is how the fight ends. He ends on top of Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley, completely dejected, knows that he did not win a fight there, looks dejected while the decision is being read out. Me, as a Petr Yan fan, knowing how much the UFC loves Sean O'Malley, wants to push Sean O'Malley, knew he would probably be given the decision despite the fact that he got beat up in this one. And it really is just a shame, because Sean O'Malley, I know he is a level-headed person in a way. I think his ego is weird, and he puts on the persona that he does, and it doesn't work for him. But when he's being honest, you can tell the dude is a genuine introspective person, and he knew it based on his demeanor and the post-fight speech and everything. You could tell that he knew he didn't win the fight, right? He just kind of had to play it up. But then his antics after the fight, I rewatched the fight and I clearly won that one. No, he didn't win the fight. This is a terrible robbery. This is on the level, I would say, of Jared Gordon versus Paddy Pimblett, although I would say that Sean O'Malley has a better argument to be given this fight than Paddy did in that one. But it's just another case of a company star, cash cow, perceived cash cow, being gifted decisions against higher ranked opponents. And this is one of the most egregious cases of it. And I feel like revisionist history has come into play, where people kind of tried to spin that third round into some dominant round for Sean O'Malley, when it really wasn't. In fact, it was far from it, right? It was far from it. Petr Yan was the one dominating the action in the third round for the majority of it, right? Not just little individual moments where one single grazing knee opens up a cut, right? No, Peter was the one landing big shots, taking down Sean O'Malley, ending up and finishing the fight in dominant position after landing big shots. Now, even if the strike numbers are 40 to 15, who was landing the big shots and who's landing the majorly pity-patter shots? Is Petr Yan landing the big ones, Sean landing the pity-patter ones, aside, of course, from the big knee, right? The big knee was great, and the follow-up left hand was great. Other than that, man, the round was all Petr Yan, and he should have won this fight 30-27. I think the media scores that got it right were the ones who scored it 30-27, but 29-28 is fine as well. Although 29-28 for Sean O'Malley simply does not check out for me. And all of these padded fucking stat numbers are not going to sway me in the slightest. But I want you guys to let me know in the comment section whether you agree with my determinations here, whether you disagree, and also any other robberies you want me to cover in future videos, because I would love to keep doing this. I would love to revisit 3 robberies per video like this and just see what determination I come to, man. And I hope that you guys are interested as well. I did get a ton of suggestions in my community post surrounding this idea, so I appreciate all the suggestions, and I appreciate you watching. I'll see you in the next one.